Humans are truly fascinating creatures, Ambassador Corva remarked, swirling the luminescent blue liquid in her glass. Absolutely unpredictable, wildly emotional, and completely insane. The gathered dignitaries from across the Galactic Federation nodded in agreement. We were at the annual Summit of Species, where representatives from over 3,000 civilizations gathered to discuss matters of cosmic importance. And once again, the topic had turned to humans. I straightened my posture, my forearms adjusting the ceremonial robes that marked me as the chief historian of Prantan. Ambassador, with all due respect, I believe your assessment lacks nuance. Corva's antenna twitched in amusement. Lacks nuance? Grand Historian Telex, their response to being called primitive was to detonate a nuclear device inside a black hole. What part of that strikes you as balanced behavior? The room erupted in laughter, mandibles clicking and tentacles waving in various expressions of mirth across species. I remained composed, though internally I was sighing. Always the same jokes, the same dismissive attitude toward the newest members of our federation. Perhaps, I suggested, raising a claw for silence, you might benefit from hearing the full account? Not the simplified version that circulates at these gatherings as entertainment. Ambassador Dorox from the Centaurian regime scoffed, his crystalline exoskeleton glittering under the ambient light. We all know the story, historian. Humans were offended by Admiral Zaxon's report classifying them as a Level 2 civilization, so they threw a tantrum and proved his point. Actually, I corrected, that's not what happened at all. The room quieted. Even Corva seemed interested now, setting down her drink. I was there, I said. I was the junior cultural attaché assigned to Earth when these events transpired. And the true story is quite different from what you've heard. And so I began my tale, transporting them back 50 Earth years, to when humans made their first contact with the Galactic Federation. The year was 2078 on the human calendar when our scout ships detected unusual signals emanating from the Sol system. Humanity had just established their first permanent settlements on Mars and were beginning to harness fusion energy in earnest. Standard protocol dictated observation, but Admiral Zaxon, infamous for his rigid adherence to efficiency over diplomacy, decided on immediate contact. Dr. Amelia Parker was the first human to speak with representatives of the Galactic Federation. She was the director of NASA's Interstellar Communications Division, a brilliant physicist with a notorious temper and an even more infamous sense of humor. I remember watching her face on the view screen when Admiral Zaxon's massive flagship dropped out of hyperspace just beyond lunar orbit. There was no fear in her eyes, only wonder and excitement. "Holy crap," she had said, her curly red hair bouncing as she jumped out of her chair. "Are you seeing this, Fernando? Tell me you're recording this." Fernando Diaz, her second in command, was indeed recording everything, his dark eyes wide with amazement. "Transmission incoming, Director. They're speaking English? How is that possible?" Of course, we weren't actually speaking English. Our universal translators were converting our communication into their language patterns, a basic technology that even Level 3 civilizations typically develop. Admiral Zaxon's face appeared on their screens, stern, imposing, with the characteristic violet skin and ridged forehead of the Zorganian species. "People of Earth," he intoned, "I am Admiral Zaxon of the Galactic Federation. We have been observing your development and have deemed your species ready for initial contact and prepared to receive our delegation." Dr. Parker blinked twice, turned to Fernando and whispered, "Is it just me, or does he sound like he's reading from a really bad sci-fi script?" Fernando stifled a laugh, not realizing our sensors could pick up their whispers perfectly well. Admiral Zaxon was not amused. His first report back to the Federation Council described humans as irreverent, undisciplined, and lacking proper deference to superior species. The landing went no better. Earth's leaders had hastily assembled in Geneva, Switzerland, a neutral location where diplomats from various nations had gathered to meet the alien delegation. Security was tight, media coverage was global, and tension was high. When our shuttle landed and Admiral Zaxon emerged with his entourage, including myself, there was a moment of profound silence. Then Dr. Parker, who had been selected as Earth's scientific liaison, stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth," she said formally, then broke into a grin. "We would have cleaned up a bit if we'd known company was coming." Admiral Zaxon did not appreciate the humor. "Your world is already alarmingly polluted," he stated flatly. "It reflects poorly on your species' foresight. Not the best start to interspecies relations." The summit that followed was tense. Earth's representatives were eager to learn about space travel, advanced technology, and the nature of the Galactic Federation. Admiral Zaxon was primarily interested in assessing Earth's development level to determine what technologies they would be permitted to access. Based on our preliminary observations, the Admiral announced on the third day, "We classify human civilization as Level 2, planetarily oriented primitive. You have achieved limited space travel within your solar system, but have not developed proper warp capabilities or psychic technologies. Your reliance on digital rather than organic computing also marks you as technologically underdeveloped." The room had gone silent. I remember watching the blood drain from some faces, while others turned red with anger. President Kwan of the United Earth Alliance rose to her feet. "With respect, Admiral, we may be new to the galactic community, but primitive seems unnecessarily judgmental. Humanity has overcome tremendous challenges to reach this point." Admiral Zaxon blinked his three eyes slowly, a gesture of dismissal in Zorganian culture. "All species face challenges, President Kwan. The fact remains that your technological development has followed an inefficient path. Your continued reliance on nuclear fission, even as you develop fusion, is particularly concerning." Dr. Parker couldn't contain herself any longer. "Inefficient? We've gone from horse-drawn carriages to Mars colonies in less than 3 centuries. How long did it take your species to achieve space travel, Admiral?" This was a diplomatic faux pas. In Zorganian culture, questioning the development path of another species was deeply offensive. Admiral Zaxon's skin darkened to a deep purple, a warning sign I recognized immediately. "The development timeline of the Zorganian people is irrelevant," he snapped. "What matters is that you have pursued technologies with little regard for their cosmic implications. Your experiments with particle acceleration alone could have created a vacuum decay scenario that would have destroyed not just your world but potentially an entire sector of the galaxy." Dr. Parker's eyes narrowed. "So we're dangerous primitives now?" "Fantastic. Just so we're clear, you show up unannounced, declare us underdeveloped, and then tell us we're too incompetent to handle our own scientific advancement. Is that an accurate summary of your position, Admiral?" "Your emotional response merely confirms my assessment," Admiral Zaxon replied coldly. That night, I found Dr. Parker alone in the conference center's garden, staring up at the stars. As junior cultural attack, it was my job to smooth over any misunderstandings. "Dr. Parker," I ventured, "I want to apologize for the Admiral's approach. Not all members of the Federation share his perspective." She turned to look at me, her expression softening slightly. "Thanks, Telex. I appreciate that. But it still stings, you know. We've worked so hard to get where we are." "I understand," I said, settling my 4 limbs onto a bench beside her. "If it helps, my own species was once classified as Level 2 as well. The classification isn't permanent." She laughed bitterly. "So we can graduate from primitive to what? Slightly less primitive?" The Admiral made it pretty clear he thinks we're one bad decision away from blowing ourselves up. "Admiral Zaxon sees only risk, never potential," I explained. "But many of us recognize that different evolutionary paths yield different strengths. Your species has shown remarkable adaptability and creativity." Dr. Parker was quiet for a moment. "You know what really bothers me? It's not just the insult. It's that he's probably going to restrict what technologies we can access based on this classification, right? I couldn't lie to her. Yes, Level 2 civilizations are typically limited to technology sharing that enhances planetary sustainability and basic medical advancement. Interstellar travel technologies would be restricted. So we're stuck in our own solar system because some purple three-eyed bureaucrat thinks we're not ready for the cosmic highway? Her frustration was palpable. That's not just insulting, it's imprisonment. That conversation planted the seed of what would later become known throughout the galaxy as the Parker Doctrine, humanity's unique approach to proving their cosmic worth. The next morning, something had changed in Dr. Parker's demeanor. She was calm, focused, and surprisingly amenable during the discussions. This sudden shift made Admiral Zaxon suspicious, but he proceeded with outlining the restrictions that would be placed on Earth. As a Level 2 civilization, he explained, you will be granted observer status in the Galactic Federation. Trade will be permitted but monitored. Technology exchange will be limited to agricultural improvements, climate stabilization, and basic medical advancements. Your ships will not be permitted beyond your solar system until you have demonstrated the maturity to handle greater cosmic responsibilities. President Kwan looked ready to object, but Dr. Parker placed a hand on her arm. We understand, Admiral, Dr. Parker said pleasantly. In fact, we appreciate your concern for our development. We wouldn't want to stumble into any cosmic disasters due to our primitive nature. Admiral Zaxon was visibly confused by this acceptance. So was I, to be honest. However, Dr. Parker continued, we would like to demonstrate a project we've been working on. Perhaps it might help you reassess our classification. Would the Federation delegation be interested in observing an experiment we're conducting near Saturn next week? Admiral Zaxon consulted with his advisors briefly. What kind of experiment? Oh, nothing too advanced for primitives like us, Dr. Parker said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Just a little demonstration of how we approach cosmic phenomena. We've been studying the micro-black hole that appeared in Saturn's rings after the asteroid collision last year. This caught everyone's attention. The Federation had indeed been monitoring that event, a rare natural formation of a stable micro-black hole following the impact of a dense asteroid with peculiar quantum properties. You've been studying the black hole? Admiral Zaxon asked skeptically. With what technology? Nothing fancy, Dr. Parker assured him. Just some very primitive nuclear devices and gravitational sensors. We're curious beings, Admiral. We like to poke things and see what happens. I remember feeling a distinct chill at her words. The gleam in her eyes reminded me of a Proxima predator right before it pounces. Admiral Zaxon, however, saw this as an opportunity to further assess human capabilities. Very well. The Federation will observe your experiment. Perhaps it will provide additional data for your classification review. Dr. Parker smiled brightly. Wonderful. We'll prepare everything. It should be quite educational. As the human delegation filed out, I approached Dr. Parker privately. What are you planning? I asked quietly. She glanced around to ensure no one was listening, then whispered, we're going to show the Admiral exactly what primitives like us can do when we're underestimated. Don't worry, Telex, no one's going to get hurt. But some minds are definitely going to be blown. I should have reported this conversation immediately. Federation protocol was clear about potential security risks. But something about Dr. Parker's determination intrigued me. And if I'm being completely honest, Admiral Zaxon's condescension toward humans had begun to bother me as well. So I said nothing. And that decision changed the course of galactic history. The Federation delegation arrived at the Saturn observation post 1 week later. Humanity had constructed an impressive space station in orbit around the ringed planet with a clear view of the anomaly, with a micro-black hole roughly the size of a terrestrial basketball, its event horizon a perfect sphere of darkness against the golden rings. Dr. Parker led the tour personally, showing Admiral Zaxon and his team the observation equipment. Everything seemed standard for a Level 2 civilization, slightly crude by Federation standards, but functional. As you can see, Admiral, Dr. Parker explained, we've been monitoring the black hole's radiation signature and gravitational effects. It's quite stable for its size. Admiral Zaxon looked bored. Yes, micro black holes of this nature typically maintain stability for several decades before evaporating through Hawking radiation. This is basic cosmology. Dr. Parker nodded agreeably. Of course, basic stuff. We primitives are still very excited by it, though. The sarcasm was thinly veiled. But we've been wondering about something more interesting, how the black hole might respond to a directed energy injection. Admiral Zaxon's third eye widened slightly, a sign of alarm in his species. What kind of energy injection? Oh, nothing too sophisticated, Dr. Parker said casually. Just a precisely targeted nuclear detonation. The room went silent. You intend to detonate a nuclear device near the black hole? Admiral Zaxon asked incredulously. That would be extremely dangerous and serves no scientific purpose. Dr. Parker raised an eyebrow. Actually, we've run thousands of simulations. The detonation, if properly calibrated and directed, should create a momentary distortion in the event horizon or a ripple effect that could tell us much about the internal structure of micro-black holes. This is precisely the kind of reckless experimentation that confirms your Level 2 classification, Admiral Zaxon declared. I forbid this demonstration. Dr. Parker's smile disappeared. With all due respect, Admiral, you have no authority to forbid anything within our solar system. You've made it abundantly clear that we're restricted to this cosmic neighborhood, so what happens here is our business. We're conducting this experiment. You're welcome to observe or leave. The human military personnel in the room subtly shifted their positions, making it clear they stood with Dr. Parker. Admiral Zaxon turned to me in disbelief. Junior attached telex. Explain to these humans the potential consequences of their actions. I hesitated. My studies of human history had taught me that they rarely responded well to authoritarian demands. And truthfully, I was curious to see what Dr. Parker had planned. Admiral, I said carefully, perhaps we should observe their safety protocols before judging the experiment. Humans have a long history of learning through direct testing rather than pure theory. Admiral Zaxon was furious, but he was also trapped by diplomatic protocol. The Federation's own rules stated that Level 2 civilizations retained autonomy within their home systems. Very well, he said stiffly. We will observe. But when this experiment fails catastrophically, it will be documented in your permanent record. Dr. Parker grinned. Excellent. Fernando, please begin the countdown sequence. Fernando Diaz, who had been quietly monitoring equipment nearby, nodded and activated a series of controls. Nuclear packages positioned and primed, Director. Targeting systems locked on the event horizon's northern quadrant. Countdown initiated at T-10 minutes. As the countdown proceeded, I noticed something odd. The humans didn't seem nervous about deploying a nuclear device near a black hole. Instead, they were calmly making minute adjustments to their equipment, occasionally exchanging knowing glances. At T-1 minute, Dr. Parker invited us to the main observation deck, where we could witness the experiment directly through the specialized viewport. I recommend the protective eyewear, she said, handing out specially designed glasses. Nuclear detonations are quite bright, even from this distance. Admiral Zaxon put on the glasses reluctantly, his posture rigid with disapproval. The final countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 initiation. There was a brilliant flash of light as the nuclear device detonated precisely at the edge of the black hole's event horizon. The energy release was spectacular, a burst of radiation that momentarily outshone Saturn itself. But what happened next was something none of us, except apparently the humans, had anticipated. Instead of creating a simple ripple effect in the event horizon, the precisely calibrated nuclear blast triggered something remarkable. The black hole began to change. Its perfect spherical darkness started to warp and twist, spinning rapidly as wisps of light emerged from what should have been absolute darkness. "What is happening?" Admiral Zaxon demanded, his 3 eyes wide with shock. Dr. Parker smiled triumphantly. "We're opening a micro-wormhole, Admiral." The nuclear detonation was precisely calculated to excite the quantum foam at the event horizon boundary, creating a stable Einstein-Rosen bridge. "Impossible." Admiral Zaxon sputtered. "A Level 2 civilization could not possibly understand the quantum mechanics required for artificial wormhole generation." "Apparently this Level 2 civilization does," Dr. Parker replied with undisguised satisfaction. "Fernando, activate the probe." A small, sleek device launched from the station, heading directly toward the now swirling vortex that had replaced the simple black hole. "The probe is calibrated to pass through the wormhole and transmit data back to us," Dr. Parker explained. "Based on our calculations, it should emerge approximately 4.3 light-years away, near Proxima Centauri." We all watched in stunned silence as the probe disappeared into the swirling darkness. The monitoring screens flickered momentarily, then stabilized, showing a stream of incoming data. "Probe transmission successful," Fernando announced, his voice steady but his eyes shining with excitement. "Confirming location confirmed." "The probe is transmitting from the Proxima Centauri system." The human staff erupted in cheers and applause. Dr. Parker turned to Admiral Zaxon, whose violet skin had paled considerably. "So, Admiral," she said with the sweetest smile imaginable, about that Level 2 classification, the look on Admiral Zaxon's face was priceless. All 3 of his eyes were blinking rapidly, a Zorganian expression of extreme confusion and distress. His violet skin had taken on a sickly lavender hue, and his ceremonial uniform suddenly seemed too tight around his neck ridges. This is impossible," he stammered, staring at the data screens. "The energy calculations alone would require computing power beyond your technological level. The precision needed for targeted disruption of an event horizon, the gravitational equations." Dr. Parker casually leaned against the control console, arms folded across her chest. "You know what humans are really good at, Admiral? Finding shortcuts. Your species might have developed warp technology by meticulously working through every theoretical model over centuries. We tend to blow things up and see what happens." Fernando struggled to maintain his professional demeanor but couldn't suppress a snort of laughter. The rest of the human crew maintained their focus on their stations, though many wore barely concealed smiles of triumph. I was equally stunned, but for different reasons. As a cultural historian, I recognized the significance of what was unfolding. This wasn't just a scientific breakthrough, it was a power move, a deliberate reshaping of the diplomatic landscape. "Dr. Parker," I said carefully, "would you mind explaining how you achieved this? The Federation's records indicate that artificial wormhole technology wasn't developed until the Andorian civilization reached Level 4 status." "Happy to explain, Telex," she replied, her expression softening slightly when addressing me. "We didn't actually create the wormhole from scratch. The micro-black hole already had unusual quantum properties. We detected fluctuations in its Hawking radiation that suggested an inherent instability in its dimensional structure." Fernando pulled up a series of complex equations on the main screen. "We realized that the black hole wasn't just capturing matter, it was occasionally exchanging particles with somewhere else. We tracked the quantum signatures and determined it was naturally forming a weak connection to the Proxima Centauri system. All we did," Dr. Parker continued, "was give it a precisely calculated nudge. The nuclear detonation wasn't just about brute force, it was about timing and positioning. We essentially convinced an already semi-permeable cosmic structure to open up a bit wider." Admiral Zaxon had recovered enough of his composure to look skeptical. "Even if what you're saying is true, this could be a dangerous anomaly. rather than a controlled scientific achievement. The wormhole could collapse at any moment, possibly releasing devastating energy. Dr. Parker nodded. That's a fair concern. Fernando, show the Admiral the stability readings. The screen shifted to display a steady waveform with minimal fluctuations. The Einstein-Rosen bridge has maintained consistent dimensional parameters for the past 7 minutes, Fernando reported. All indicators suggest it's stabilizing rather than degrading. We can close it too, Dr. Parker added casually. We've prepared a secondary device that can reverse the process if necessary. Admiral Zaxon looked like he might collapse. You have weaponized a cosmic phenomenon that most Level 3 civilizations only understand in theory. Dr. Parker's expression hardened. We haven't weaponized anything, Admiral. We've explored and expanded our understanding of the universe, exactly what any curious species would do. The fact that you immediately frame this as a weapon says more about your perspective than ours. The tension in the room was palpable. I decided to intervene before the diplomatic situation deteriorated further. Perhaps, I suggested, we should acknowledge the remarkable achievement while also discussing its implications for human classification within the Federation framework. Dr. Parker nodded appreciatively. Good idea, Telix. Admiral, shall we adjourn to the conference room? I believe our demonstration has provided sufficient new data for reconsideration of Earth's status. The Admiral looked like he wanted to refuse, but protocol demanded a formal reassessment given the evidence. With obvious reluctance, he agreed. As we filed out of the control room, I fell into step beside Dr. Parker. That was quite a revelation, I said quietly. But I'm curious, why show this capability now? And so dramatically? Her expression turned serious. Because being labeled primitive and confined to our solar system would have strangled us, Telix. Humanity needs room to grow, to explore. We need the stars. She glanced at Admiral Zaxon's retreating back. And honestly, we were tired of being patronized. I couldn't help but chuckle. The Admiral's reports described humans as unpredictably emotional, but I'm starting to think you're actually quite calculating. We can be both, she replied with a wink. That's what makes us interesting. The emergency classification hearing was conducted via quantum link with the Federation Council back on Nexus Prime, the administrative center of galactic governance. 12 representatives from the major Federation species formed a semicircle of holographic projections in the Saturn station's conference room. High Counselor Vex, an ancient progenitor with translucent skin that revealed the slow movement of luminous organs beneath, addressed the gathering first. Admiral Zaxon, we have reviewed your preliminary report and the data from the human experiment. This is most unexpected. High Counselor, Admiral Zaxon began, his voice strained. I maintain that despite this singular achievement, human civilization still lacks the broader technological and social development consistent with Level 3 classification. This appears to be an anomalous advancement in a single field. Dr. Parker stepped forward. With respect, High Counselor, our wormhole generation is not an isolated breakthrough. We've prepared a comprehensive data package demonstrating several other technologies that we believe have been underestimated in the initial assessment. She nodded to Fernando, who activated a holographic display in the center of the room. It showed schematics for advanced quantum computing systems, neural interface technologies, and environmental restoration projects that had revitalized previously decimated ecosystems on Earth. Furthermore, she continued, we've developed theoretical frameworks for technologies we haven't yet built, including concepts for non-nuclear wormhole generation, consciousness transfer mechanisms, and gravity manipulation systems. Our limitation has not been understanding, but resources and time. Admiral Zaxon snorted derisively. Theoretical frameworks are meaningless without practical implementation. Half the Level 2 civilizations in the galaxy have theories about advanced technology. Actually, Dr. Parker countered, We do have practical implementations, just not at scale. She gestured to Fernando again, who brought up video documentation of experimental gravity manipulation devices operating in a laboratory setting. The council members murmured among themselves, clearly impressed. High Counselor Vex's inner organs pulsed with a blue light, an indication of deep thought in progenitor physiology. Dr. Parker, your achievements are noteworthy. However, classification within the Federation considers more than technological advancement. We must also evaluate social development, ecological sustainability, and cosmic awareness. Fair enough, Dr. Parker agreed. Let's discuss those criteria. What followed was 3 hours of intensive debate. Dr. Parker presented evidence of humanity's rapid social evolution, from the unification accords that had finally brought peace to Earth, to the Mars Declaration of Cosmic Rights, which extended legal protections to potential alien life forms before they'd even been encountered. She highlighted Earth's remarkable recovery from the climate catastrophes of the 2040s, showing how humans had not only stabilized their atmosphere but had begun to develop terraforming techniques they hoped to apply to Venus. Throughout the presentation, I watched the council members carefully. Most seemed genuinely surprised by humanity's progress. Admiral Zaxon grew increasingly uncomfortable, occasionally attempting to interject with references to human history's darker chapters. We cannot overlook the fact, he insisted at one point, that merely 50 years ago, these people were still engaged in tribal warfare and rampant environmental destruction. Dr. Parker didn't deny it. We've made terrible mistakes, Admiral. We've hurt our planet and each other. But the measure of a civilization isn't the absence of failures, it's how quickly and thoroughly we learn from them. She brought up images of the former nuclear wastelands, now transformed into vibrant forests, the oceanic dead zones now teeming with rehabilitated marine ecosystems, the borders that had once divided nations now marked only by welcome centers. We haven't achieved perfection, she acknowledged. But we've demonstrated an exceptional capacity for rapid course correction and adaptation. If that isn't a valuable trait for participation in a galactic community, I don't know what is. High Counselor Vex raised a translucent hand, silencing further debate. The Council will deliberate privately. Please await our decision. The holographic projections flickered and changed, showing the Council members in quiet conversation among themselves, though no sound was transmitted. Admiral Zaxon paced nervously while Dr. Parker sat calmly, reviewing notes with Fernando. I found myself surprisingly invested in the outcome. My assignment to Earth had been meant as a minor diplomatic posting, a stepping stone in my career. But these humans with their contradiction of pragmatic idealism had begun to fascinate me. After 20 minutes that felt much longer, the Council projections returned to their original orientation, facing us. We have reached a decision, High Counselor Vex announced. Based on the evidence presented, and particularly considering the innovative approach to wormhole physics demonstrated today, Earth is provisionally reclassified as a Level 3 civilization, interstellar capable. Dr. Parker's team broke into applause, while Admiral Zaxon's posture stiffened further. However, the High Counselor continued. This classification carries certain responsibilities. The wormhole technology must be properly secured and regulated. Federation observers will be stationed to ensure compliance with cosmic safety protocols. And humanity must demonstrate continued advancement in both technological and social domains to maintain this status. We understand and accept these conditions, Dr. Parker replied formally, though her eyes sparkled with triumph. Admiral Zaxon, the High Counselor added, your mission parameters are hereby adjusted. You will establish a permanent Federation embassy on Earth and oversee the integration process for humanity's new status. The Admiral looked like he might object, but instead gave a curt nod of acknowledgement. The Council projections flickered once more and disappeared, leaving us in sudden silence. Dr. Parker turned to Admiral Zaxon with an extended hand, a human gesture of reconciliation. I look forward to working with you, Admiral. Despite our differences, I believe we both want what's best for the galaxy. The Admiral stared at her hand for a long moment before reluctantly taking it in his three-fingered grip. You are not what I expected, Dr. Parker. That's humanity's specialty, Admiral. Exceeding expectations. Her smile was genuine this time. Now, how about we discuss that technology exchange program? We're particularly interested in your sustainable energy systems. As they walked out together, Fernando sidled up to me, a mischievous expression on his face. Want to know a secret, Junior attached telex? I'm not sure I do, I replied honestly, but I suspect you're going to tell me anyway. He glanced around to ensure no one was listening. The black hole was already partially connected to Proxima Centauri before we even started. We just found it and figured out how to enhance it. The hard work was already done by nature. I blinked in surprise. You mean you didn't actually create the wormhole from scratch? Not entirely, he admitted with a grin. But the Admiral didn't need to know that. The important thing is that we understood what was happening and found a way to stabilize and utilize it, which is still way beyond what a primitive civilization should be able to do. That's deceptive, I said, though I couldn't help but be impressed by the ingenuity. Fernando shrugged. We call it creative presentation of facts. Besides, the nuclear detonation did require incredibly precise calculations and timing. 1 microsecond off, and we'd have just vaporized the black hole instead of transforming it. I shook my head in amazement. Humanity is going to be a very interesting addition to the Federation. You have no idea, Fernando replied with a laugh. This is just the beginning. Over the next 10 Earth years, humanity's integration into the Galactic Federation proceeded with remarkable speed. The wormhole network expanded as humans discovered more micro-black holes with similar properties throughout their solar system and beyond. Trade routes were established, cultural exchanges flourished, and Earth became a popular destination for xenoanthropologists studying rapid societal adaptation. Admiral Zaxon remained Earth's primary Federation liaison, though his initial disdain gradually transformed into grudging respect. Dr. Parker became Earth's first ambassador to the Federation Council, where her straightforward approach and occasional sarcasm both irritated and refreshed the often staid proceedings. As for me, I requested permanent assignment to Earth's embassy, fascinated by human development. I eventually became chief historian for human affairs within the Federation archives, documenting their unconventional path to galactic citizenship. Which brings us back to the present, 50 years later, and this gathering of dignitaries, where the old story of how humans nuked a black hole has become more legend than history. I finished my tale and looked around at the assembled representatives, most of whom were now leaning forward in rapt attention. So you see, I concluded, humans didn't nuke a black hole because they were insulted. They did it because they understood something fundamental about cosmic phenomena that even we had overlooked. That some black holes naturally form weak connections to distant points in space. Their achievement wasn't just technological, it was conceptual. They saw potential where we saw only danger. Ambassador Corva had long since set aside her drink. But the humans did feel insulted by being called primitive, didn't they? Of course they did, I acknowledged. But that wasn't their primary motivation. They needed to break free of solar system confinement to survive and thrive as a species. The insult just provided the theatrical backdrop for a demonstration they were already planning. Ambassador Dorox's crystalline exoskeleton clicked as he shifted uncomfortably. Still, it was a reckless approach. They could have caused catastrophic damage. Perhaps, I conceded. But they didn't. Their calculations were precise, their understanding deeper than we gave them credit for. And in the 50 years since, how many Federation species have benefited from the wormhole network they pioneered? How many lives have been saved by their medical innovations? How many diplomatic crises have been averted by their unconventional negotiation tactics? The room fell silent as the representatives considered this. Humans had indeed become integral to Federation operations in a remarkably short time. There's a lesson here, I concluded, about the danger of dismissing what we don't understand as primitive or inferior. The humans didn't just demonstrate a technological capability that day at Saturn. They revealed a fundamentally different approach to problem solving, one that has since proven invaluable to our collective progress. Ambassador Korva nodded slowly. Point taken, Grand Historian Telex. Though I must say, they remain exhaustingly unpredictable. That's precisely what makes them valuable, I replied with a smile. In a galaxy where most species follow predictable developmental patterns, the humans remind us that there are always alternative paths, unexpected solutions, and new ways of seeing old problems. As the gathering dispersed, I caught sight of a familiar figure entering the hall, Ambassador Parker herself, now in her 80s but still straight-backed and bright-eyed, her once red hair now a striking silver. She spotted me and made her way over, that same mischievous smile I remembered from 50 years ago still playing at the corners of her mouth. "Telling the black hole story again, Telex?" she asked, settling into the seat beside me. It seemed appropriate, I replied. Some of our younger members have been dismissing human contributions again. She laughed, the sound still youthful despite her age. Some things never change. So, did you tell them the whole truth about the wormhole? I told them you understood the black hole's natural properties and enhanced them, I said carefully. But not that we were mostly guessing and got incredibly lucky when it worked. I sighed, all four of my hands gesturing in resignation. Ambassador Parker, even after 50 years, some diplomatic details are best left to the historian's private notes. She patted my upper right arm affectionately. That's why I like you, Telex. You understand that sometimes the legend serves better than the complete truth. She glanced around the now emptying hall. You know, the Proxima black hole opened a connection to a new system yesterday. Completely unexplored territory. The Council is debating who should lead the first expedition. And you have an opinion on the matter, I assume? Naturally. Her eyes twinkled with the same excitement I'd seen when she first faced down Admiral Zaxon. I think it should be a joint mission, humans and Prantans. After all, we have a history of making remarkable discoveries together. I couldn't help but smile. Are you suggesting we go poke another cosmic phenomenon and see what happens? Precisely, she replied, raising her glass in a toast, to continuing education for supposedly advanced civilizations. I raised my own glass in return, to humanity forever changing the definition of primitive. And somewhere across the galaxy, I was certain Admiral Zaxon was nervously checking the latest human scientific journals, wondering what cosmic principle they might decide to test next.